Take the cotton out of your ears and put it in your mouth. This is probably the most important tip anybody could give you when it comes to selling. I've been discussing this a lot throughout the month of March with people because I've been focused on it in terms of the content that I've been creating. Sales and marketing, I kind of headed off March as my marketing madness month. And this is the last in the series that I've done here at blog.bqe.com dealing with sales and marketing topics. And the last one I think is the most important. Again, taking the cotton out of our ears and putting it in our mouths. I've talked with people who follow programs that give them long questionnaires to, maybe even not long questionnaires, but questionnaires to ask a client. And as I discussed in the write-up, my concern here is you've spent all this time nurturing and cultivating a relationship with a person. If you've followed along the posts I've made previously throughout the month, and if you are at the write-up, I summarize them for you at the top with links so that you can quickly access this resource that I've effectively built for you on how to develop a sales and marketing strategy for your firm. But, so if you've spent this time cultivating and developing these relationships with a person, and then they're finally going to get to that most intimate part where they're thinking seriously about giving you their hard-earned money, you're going to turn around with a questionnaire and say, okay, fill this out for me. It doesn't get much more impersonal than that. At any rate, when I get to this point, if all the stuff that we've done before has been working, we've been sending out emails, we've been using social media, we've been finding those opportunities and developing relationships with those people, we get them to the point where now they're on the phone and now they're seriously asking about whether or not we can help them. This is the time to get intimate, not to get impersonal with a questionnaire. And rather than get bogged down in all the different things that I should say or do or all the questions I should ask them, I've sort of perfected a system for myself that boils down to not even a question, one very simple request. Tell me what's going on with your business. Now that works for me because my clients are other businesses. If your client or prospect is an individual, then just reframe it accordingly and say, tell me what's going on. Tell me how I can help. Right? If you're an architect and somebody's coming into your office or getting on the phone with you because they're considering hiring you to design their plans, then the question is going to be something more like, tell me what you're looking for. Paint me the picture of what you're hoping to see. What do you hope to accomplish, right? The bottom line is you keep it short and succinct, one simple, not a question, but a request. Tell me what's going on in your world, whatever that world is. And then take the cotton out of your ears and put it in your mouth and take notes. Now I mentioned in the write-up when it comes to the note-taking, this is important. Evernote is a great tool for this purpose. Most of you are probably going to go to that by default. I use something called Workflowy. I've switched from Evernote to this recently, and here's why. Let's take a look at my screen real quick. When I get on the phone with a client, this is open all day, every day, by the way. It's one of the default tabs that opens up in my Chrome browser every morning. I'm going to hit Control-End, hit Enter to create a new bullet point. I'm going to click on that new bullet point so it comes into its own page, and I'm going to say call with so-and-so. And from here it's simple, and this is why I love Workflowy. It's outlining, it's bullet points, and it's beautiful in its simplicity, and it's really easy for me to just take notes, and as I mentioned in the write-up, the notes should be very high level, identifying where they indicate the problems are. So I'm listening intently, and I have this blown up full screen. I don't have any other tabs in front of me, or I don't have anything else that can distract me. I need to stay focused on the call with the prospect. And I might say, so they might come in and say, my balance sheet is a mess. Right, so I just write balance sheet is a mess and go on and hit enter. I'm ready for the next bullet point. What else is wrong? And then sometimes they come in having no clue, in which case I'll ask them some questions aimed at getting them to tell me, why do you think your balance sheet is a mess? What are you seeing that you expect to look differently? Happened just recently. A client called me up and he said his balance sheet's off, and I said, okay, what's off about it? And he says, well, it says I have $800,000 in assets. I know I don't have $800,000 in assets. So the bottom line is we're taking notes and we're going to highlight the high-level bullet points that kind of describe where the person has indicated that they need help. And then I'm going to offer solutions. That's really all it comes down to, which means part two of all this is that I have to be prepared with solutions. Now before we go there, and to fill in some of the blanks in between that I wrote up in the write-up for this, we want to talk about why it's important and why I think it's been so effective for me to approach it this way. Rather than having a whole questionnaire, it's almost like that assumes that the client has no clue how to talk to you, right? And for me, it's just a much more organic process. Just have a conversation. Now, after they've agreed to come in the door, then yeah, I've got a questionnaire for them to fill out just so I can capture the information I need to set them up as a client. Very different ball game at that point, very different part of the process. But when they're a client looking to come in my door, and notice the language I use, a client, one of the keys to this, one of the keys to what I feel has been so effective for me is I sort of follow a philosophy that says I assume the sale. I don't even question it in my mind. When I get on the phone, as far as I'm concerned, they're already a client. So I move past that part that makes us nervous, right? That's the part that makes us nervous, is we're nervous that they're not going to want to buy what we're selling them, or not going to, and I know that's a bad way to put it. A lot of us really don't like to think of it that way. But we're nervous that we're not going to be able to convince them that we have the right solution for them, even though we really honestly feel that we do. So I move past that point mentally, and I just assuming they were already a client, an existing client calling me up and asking me because they think they need more help in a certain area. That's kind of the point I take it to mentally. And as soon as I take it to that point, I'm no longer nervous. Again, it goes back to being a much simpler conversation. It's about finding out what their needs are and then addressing them. So I assume the sale. I assume the sale's already made. It's not a question of whether or not I can do the job. That's where the nervousness, I think, comes in, is we think we have to convince people that we're capable of doing the job. If I assume they already know that, and I assume they should already know that by the time they're calling me and asking me for my help, then it shouldn't be an issue, right? So again, the only issue now is moving past that point that we would normally get nervous about and go straight to, let me just keep it simple, listen to the person, find out what their needs are, and then think in terms of what solutions I can offer that would solve their problems, right? Or make their lives better. One of the slogans I like to use in my own business is, that our goal is to improve our clients' lives so profoundly they couldn't imagine working with anyone else. And so I'm thinking along those lines when I'm on these sales calls. Now, what does this do? Again, going back to the idea of taking the cotton out of my ears and putting it in my mouth. An important qualifier here. There are going to be points in the conversation where, based on what they've already told you, you feel certain you know what the solution is. And you're going to be inclined to want to cut them off and say, okay, I've got this. But don't do that. Don't do that, because first of all, there are those times when, as you listen more information gets revealed that makes you realize that the solution you're about to offer actually isn't the right one. And sometimes if you cut a client off, and I'm speaking from direct experience, I've had these things happen. If I cut a client off and start offering the solution that it turns out is the wrong one, what it tells the client is A, I cut them off and didn't listen, and B, as a result, I offered them the wrong solution. And some clients are savvy enough to realize that I'm not offering a solution that's actually going to solve their problem, and that the reason for that is I didn't listen. That's a great way to lose a client, right? So it's important to hear them out all the way through. Don't cut them off. As a matter of fact, do the opposite. If I'm talking and the client interjects, I clam up. I want the client to do as much of the talking as possible, because the more talking they do, the more notes I can take, the more information I have about how best to serve that client. The other thing that this accomplishes, and it's the most important thing of it all, is that it shows the client that I did listen. It makes them feel like I listened to them because I did. And more importantly, and bigger than that, what that all rolls up to is I actually care. I actually don't want to just slam something down the client's throat and take their money. I actually care enough to want to understand deeply what their concerns are, where I can help, and what the best solutions are that I can offer them. That, my friends, is how you sell. Selling is not about selling. It's about listening to the client, explain what their needs are. It's about listening to the symptoms so that you can prescribe the solution that's going to make the client's lives so much better, that's going to improve the client's lives so profoundly that they couldn't imagine working with anyone else. That's what I have for you on taking the cotton out of your ears and putting it in your mouth, the key to effective selling. As always, I hope you're having an absolutely fantastic day. Hope you had some fun and learned something along the way here, and I look forward to seeing you on the web.